For what you would think, you probably could have found a better place to put it. But there's a reason that he put it where he did. This was considered to the Israelites to be the most sacred place on earth. If there was holy ground in the world, he was standing on it. First of all, David, when he was king, had amassed, as we said, a great territory, a great deal of wealth, a great number of people. He had a lot of power. And he committed a sin of arrogance. He went to his generals and he said, I would like to have a numbering of the people. And now I'm good, I want to know how good. And it took his messengers, or whatever you want to call them, 9 months to go out and count the people. And when they came back, they said, you have 1,300,000 fighting men of you. 800,000 in Israel, 500,000 in Judah. God's response to that was, and not altogether clear on the story, it was improper for him to do that. David was going to be punished by it. But God gave him a choice. How do you want to be punished? We can either have 3 years of famine, you can be harried by your enemies for 3 months, which basically means that you're going to be at war for 3 months, or you can suffer 3 days of pestilence. David placed his faith in God because he knew that God would be more merciful than man, and he accepted that he would have 3 days of pestilence. 70,000 men were killed, according to the book of Samuel. But the way that it was stopped was David realized that he had committed a sin of arrogance. He went to this particular site, which Ornan had owned, bought the site, and it was there that he made a great sacrifice. He prayed to God for forgiveness. It was at that point that God stopped the pestilence. And so only 70,000 men were lost. According to tradition, all of Israel could have been lost, potentially. So at least the pestilence was stopped there. This is also the place where Abraham was chosen by God to sacrifice Isaac, but stopped. Talk a little bit about Abraham. Abraham was 125 years old at the time. God directs Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, which he did unquestionably. God prevented him from killing Isaac. He already had the right sacrifice place made. He was going to put a knife to his son. God stopped him at the last moment. At that time, he also provided a ram caught in a thicket as a burnt sacrifice instead, so that he didn't need to sacrifice his son. The significance of Abraham is that Abraham had 2 sons. He had Ishmael, who he actually had with his wife's maidservant, and there was Isaac, who he had with his wife, Sarah. Ishmael goes on to be the progenitor, the founder, if you will, of the Arab people, and Isaac ends up being the founder, the progenitor of the Jewish people. So from 2 different perspectives, you have the pestilence ending here, and also Isaac was saved here, and Isaac is really the stem from which the rest of these Israelites spring from. This is pretty important ground. Solomon, the son of David, became the 3rd king of the Israelites. He was 21 when David died. God asked him in a dream, what shall I give to you? And God had expected the answer of, according to the Bible, that either he would ask for riches for himself, a lengthening of his life, or the shortening of his foes' lives. Instead, Solomon said he wanted an understanding heart so that he would know how to judge his people. He actually had said that you have a people so great, no, he didn't mention anything about numbering them. You have a people so great that I want to be able to know how to judge them and do what I'm supposed to do. This shows his submission to God, and he also offers himself as an instrument to God. Solomon also married a daughter of the king of Egypt, which comes up pretty frequently. This afforded him workers, materials, things like that. According to one biblical account that I've read today, Solomon had up to 700 wives and 300 concubines. That's a staggering number. Back in the day, however, whenever you overtook an area, it was customary to marry into the nobility from that area. Now, when you look at the size of the empire that he had, it shouldn't be surprising that he had an awesome number of wives. The The three ancient grandmasters in the building were Solomon, the king of Israel, and Judah, the combined kingdoms, Hiram, king of Tyre, which also many biblical scholars here, I didn't know until a few days ago, Phoenicia and the land of Canaan are synonymous, they're the same people, so the Phoenicians and the Canaanites are the same. And of course we have Hiram Abiff, who was the master architect. Let's talk about the riches of the temple for just a moment. David calls upon the chiefs, the fathers, the captains of men to make a donation to the temple. But first, he privately donates from his own purse 3,000 talents of gold. We're going to get to a talent in just a second, but I assure you it's a huge bunch of gold. And 7,000 talents of silver. And then he asks, who is now willing to consecrate their service to the Lord? So who's willing to prove up at this point? I've made my example. David collected 100,000 talents of silver, or somewhere thereabouts. The numbers aren't necessarily consistent. I used 100,000 because that's pretty safe. There was over 1 million talents of silver and absolutely immeasurable timber, brass, stone, iron. Hiram, the king of Tyre, also donated shake stones, marble, granite, all manner of different precious stones. Let's talk about gold for just a second. In modern times, if you would take anybody who's married, raise your hand, please. I'm not going to tell you much. If you would take all the gold in modern times that has ever been mined, anything that's ever been pulled out of the earth, melted all in one big pot, turned into 24-karat pure gold, that block of gold would be 60 feet by 60 feet by 60 feet standing here today by modern standards. Curious, what's a cubic foot of gold weigh? I love the internet. 1,204.85 pounds is what a cube of gold would weigh, 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. If you had a 60-foot cube, 60 by 60 by 60, then 216,000 cubic feet. Do the math, and you would find that that cube of gold, 60 by 60 by 60, would weigh 270 million pounds. So if you had this 100,000 or 108,000 talents of gold, what would that weigh? Well, it depends largely on how you measure a talent, which there's all kinds of discrepancies on, so I'm going to give kind of a bifurcated explanation here. If you go by the Phoenician talent, which is sometimes referred to as the light talent, a talent of anything weighed 57 pounds. That's whatever it took to make it 57 pounds. If you had a Babylonian talent, the quote-unquote heavy talent was 100